Offline political conversations often spill into the digital space, at times creating room for the circulation of specific narratives intended to paint different sides of a country's political conversation in a negative light. Over the course of 6 days in January 2021, this was the case as 5 different hashtags on Twitter spread narratives against the different sides of Kenya's often fraught political divide.
The
discussions were triggered by an interview hosted by vernacular radio stations, during which President Uhuru Kenyatta discussed various issues of national importance. This investigation revealed a case of coordinated amplification amongst these hashtags, with 2 distinct narratives being identified, one against the president and the other against his deputy William Ruto. A very high-profile example of the sort of divisive politics that have marked Kenya for years, sometimes with violent results. Over the past 2 years, the relationship between the president and his deputy has deteriorated. This rift began after the handshake of March 2018, when the president and former Prime Minister Raila Odinga agreed to cease hostilities and find a common ground in the interest of maintaining peace and stability. At the time, the country had been plagued by months of divisive politics following the 2017 general election. That famous handshake birthed the BBI report, which detailed a series of recommendations on unifying the country. The BBI has proposed a set of constitutional reforms that include a hybrid system of government with a president and prime minister. The runner-up of the presidential election would receive a seat in parliament as the official leader of the opposition. It doesn't stop there. The report also proposes the appointment of cabinet ministers from the National Assembly, a law which existed but was replaced in 2010. It also includes the allocation of more funds to county governments. The DP has been vocal in his opposition to certain clauses of the report, particularly on the expansion of the executive arm of government. He questioned how the BBI would address political inclusivity, given that the Prime Minister and their deputies would be presidential appointees. He also questioned a proposal to have political parties participate in the appointment of commissioners of the Electoral Commission, a move which he compared to competing teams appointing their own referee.
That is the discussion we need to have.
He made his sentiments known during the public launch of the BBI report, which had the crowd calling for him to respect the president. Alongside the BBI discussion, political conversations have also revolved around the hustler versus dynasty narrative. This narrative, which is viewed as divisive in some quarters, describes the DP's camp as hustlers who understand the plight of the everyday citizen, while branding the president's camp as a dynasty of those who have grown in privilege and power. Come January 18, 2021, Inoro, Kameme and Gukena radio stations broadcast an hour-long interview with the president. He addressed various issues, among them the BBI, former Nairobi County Governor Sonko's impeachment, and the hustler versus dynasty narrative. These stations broadcast in Kikuyu, which is the president's native language. Some criticism was leveled at the fact that he spoke on matters of national importance in a language that is not common to all Kenyans. Between 18th and 23rd of January 2021, social media kicked in and a series of trending hashtags on Twitter sparked conversations about various political issues facing the country. A network analysis revealed 2 distinct clusters within the network. An anti-Ruto cluster, which used the hashtags class war loading, ICC watch list, and Ruto return our money. And an anti-Uhuru cluster, which used the hashtags Uhuru NMS loot 27B and Uhuru petty lies. Timing of these hashtags, especially so quickly after the radio interview, as well as the distinct clusters of accounts, point to a coordinated campaign designed to discredit each other. The top 10 Twitter profiles with the most interaction rates in the anti-Uhuru cluster are as you can see here. An assessment of the most retweeted accounts under the anti-Uhuru cluster shows that the majority are run by individuals who support Ruto. These are the top 10 Twitter profiles with the most interaction rates in the anti-Ruto cluster. And as you'd expect, an assessment of the most retweeted accounts under the anti-Uhuru cluster shows that the majority are run by individuals who support Ruto. In total, the hashtags received 12,525 interactions on Twitter, comprising 1,643 tweets and 10,882 retweets from 4,616 unique accounts.
Ukiona tukihitania na mwanake uyu na ni ndamuteithirie nigetha gie giti kiu turahitania ni undu waki tondu handu ha guthie wira uria twahirwo ni andu we wira waku ni gutinda haha ugikorogana na andu ugikorogana na andu ugikorogana na andu.
During the radio interview, the president mentioned that he was behind Sonko's removal from office. He attributed this move to the governor's persistent wrangles with county government officials. He also mentioned that he had helped the former governor win his seat, but that ultimately Sonko was up and about doing nothing. In the hours following his interview, former Nairobi Governor Mike Sonko released a statement on his Facebook page strongly opposing the president's words. Sonko stated that the president was not behind his election victory and claimed that he had, within the early days of his term, cracked down on the public resource looting cartels that had held Nairobi hostage for decades. He took it further, mentioning that he had inherited a rundown city with an endemic culture of looting public resources, which he, by the way, blamed on Margaret Kenyatta, the president's half-sister, who was the mayor of Nairobi between 1970 and 1976. Shortly after Sonko's post, a tweet criticizing the president for conducting the interview in his native language initiated a conversation that resulted in this trend. The conversations praised Sonko's leadership and criticized the president for his role in removing him from office. This trend garnered thousands of retweets from over 2,484 unique accounts. A network analysis of the retweets under this trend revealed two main clusters centered around these two accounts, as can be seen in this network visualization. These key clusters had tweets that followed a mechanism we define as poll-based amplification strategy, in which users are asked to retweet in favor on one side and like in favor of the other side. The narratives on this trend claim that the Nairobi Metropolitan Services were looting public funds. In February 2020, the Nairobi County government transferred its health, transport, public works, planning and development functions to the national government, services now offered by the Nairobi Metropolitan Services. In October 2020, the NMS and the county government were in a stalemate over budgetary allocations following Sonko's rejection of the county's 2020-2021 37.7 billion Kenya shillings appropriation bill. This bill allocated 27.1 billion Kenyan shillings to the NMS, 6.4 billion to Sonko's administration, and the remaining 2 billion to the county assembly. Sonko stated that he was rejecting this because the proposed budget would leave a deficit. He wanted the county assembly to reduce the budget to 31.6 billion Kenyan shillings to tally with the county fiscal strategy paper 2020 and 2021. This stalemate was resolved after Sonko's impeachment, when acting Governor Benson Motora assented to the bill. The trend began with a tweet which claimed that the NMS was unconstitutional and contributed to the looting of public funds. The conversations in this trend claimed that Sonko was impeached to give space to cartels who wanted to loot public funds. This trend resulted in 845 retweets from 68 unique accounts. A network visualization of the hashtag, as can be seen here, revealed which accounts had the most interactions on the network. The timing and narrative of these trends suggested a coordinated effort to praise Sonko while discrediting the president and the NMS.
Agĩkorwo logic ĩrĩa mũndũ arakĩhũthĩra nĩ ya kuuga atĩ tondũ baba arĩ mũnene hani ndĩ mũnene ndiwe gũtokerwo tũkĩrĩ dynasty rĩ uko twenderie maũndũ marĩa andũ megũteithia kana mekũguna andũ ũroka kũhũrithia andũ nĩ ũndũ wake.
Our conversations under this hashtag began trending after President Kenyatta's interview where he mentioned that the hustler versus dynasty political narrative being promoted by the DP was divisive and could snowball into a class warfare if left unchecked.
Muthuri to ucio rathire agacinirwo ngari yake na aracinirwo niki tondu handu nake giaka accident na gutikire mundu taikoragwo na accident no gucina ngari ati tondu ati ni atuika ni a dynasty.
He cited an incident in which angry boda riders in Lesos, Nandi County, reportedly set a vehicle ablaze following an accident between the vehicle and a boda. This vehicle was allegedly set ablaze because the owner was a member of the dynasty. The trend began with this tweet, which revisited the 2018 handshake, mentioning that it continued despite Ruto's opposition to the gesture. The trend then picked up into conversations around the hustler and dynasty narrative, bringing attention to the vehicle allegedly set ablaze by hustler supporters. We observed a spillover of this trend to Facebook, with the image of the burnt vehicle in Lesos being shared in 8 different public Facebook groups. In this trend, we also identified a video of the DP speaking in Nandi, which is his native language. It had subtitles which translated to, quote-unquote, "The people of Central don't know me," and that he was, quote-unquote, giving a final warning and would, quote-unquote, deal severely with his opponents. The tweet accompanying the video stated that Ruto would deal with the Gema people. The comments accompanying this tweet suggested that these subtitles were false, altered to suit the narrative, and ultimately spread disinformation. This investigation revealed that indeed the subtitles are false, and in fact, Ruto talks about his political opponents, stating that they are seeking his downfall for their success. He does not allude to the people of Central Kenya or issue a warning to anybody. Overall, this trend resulted in 245 tweets and 1,346 retweets from 556 accounts. A conversation under the hashtag began with this tweet, which mentioned DP Ruto's involvement in past scandals. These were further highlighted in this tweet, which compiled various newspaper headlines over the years that mentioned DP Ruto in different scandals. The timing and narrative of these trends pointed to a coordinated effort to discredit the DP. A network analysis of these 3 trends revealed a tight cluster of accounts participating across the trends. While the exact instigator of each campaign remains unknown, it is clear that each narrative was crafted in response to different elements of the president's interview and targeted the next presidential election set for next year. Given past evidence of coordinated conversations during an election and the current political climate, the findings of this investigation emphasize the need to constantly monitor social media platforms for these polarizing conversations.